Today I'm going to be showing you the process of scientific advising in politics. Here is the sequence that most people think of. First problem, then solution, possible solutions, and politicians find out which is the best one or which they think is the best one. And we then add science to it, which theoretically should make the process more rational by using reasons and facts. It should decide which is the best solution, and it can justify for itself. And that's why people introduce scientific advising in politics. They assume that science can find the best solution. This is called the linear sequence. The consequence of this model is that experts will have a greater power because they have access to central administration and they have science to justify for themselves. People fear that they will use the knowledge to promote their own interest, for example, research funds. And we can see that in this model, science is the decider of which solution, or scientists, which solution politicians should employ, as opposed to politics. So in this process, we see the scientization of politics, which means that science has increased its power and politics has diminished its power. But here's some problems with the linear model. First, scientists are often the ones who discover the problems, not politicians. For example, global warming and DDT, they are both discovered by researchers. It should not really be science in here, instead it's scientists. This is important because theoretically science does not take a stand, like in Weber's rationalization. Science should only clarify that rather than generate a stand. In reality, scientists are not value-free. They are not neutral. They have their own values. And science often cannot decide which is the best solution. There probably isn't one. And the linear sequence is questionable. In reality, problems are often perceived by scientists. Experts are not value-free, which means politicians recruit scientists that support their claim instead of generally using science as advising. Even if scientists themselves do not take a stand in controversy, it looks like they do, because scientific knowledge is transformed into experts' opinion in the decision-making process. So this induces scientists to make claims that does not belong in scientific knowledge. The dual function of science, it can both legitimize some personal values or it can provide reliable answers. Like a convergence, science is filled with debates and uncertainties. There probably isn't a best solution, although all these researches are scientific. This is called the politicization of science. The essence of the process is the inescapable binding of scientific knowledge to its social context. And here is the recursive model. First, problems are discovered by scientists. For example, they find out that temperature is unusually rising. Then politicians decide whether it is relevant to politics, whether they should make a policy about it. But it isn't clear enough, so they request for additional knowledge. Then scientific community conducts research. In this model, we see that the ball is kicked to politics and then kicked back to science. It is both the scientization and politicization. The consequence of the recursive model is the coupling of science and politics, which means that they work side by side. And one of them does not have a unusual advantage. And the democratization of scientific knowledge, which means that every politician use science to justify it for themselves because it's so useful. And then the fear of science taking over politics disappears because of the two consequences. It is so common to use science as justification, and science does not seem to have invades politics.